Hello and welcome! Today I'll be looking at the new Warhammer Commander cards and their potential applications in cEDH and Legacy. This will be for cEDH specifically and not regular EDH since, although power level matters to some degree in normal games of Commander, they can be ultimately boiled down to play whatever you want as long as you're having fun, whereas cEDH demands at least some minimum threshold of power. Personally, I don't play Warhammer myself, so I'm looking forward to all the corrections to my pronunciations. If you're only interested in hearing about specific cards, you can skip to them using the chapters or timestamps in the description. First up, we have the Miracle cards Triumph of St. Katherine and Sister Repentia. These 5 mana white creatures herald the return of the Miracle mechanic, being able to lucky cast them for 2 mana. Triumph is a 5/5 with lifelink that says, when it dies, shuffle it into the top 6 cards of your deck. Sister Repentia is a white and black 5/1 that says, when it dies, draw 2 cards and gain 2 life. Miracle is a mechanic that has largely faded from Legacy, with mostly just Terminus or Entreat the Angel seeing very fringe play. Where these could show up is in D&T as tempo slow Sarah Avenger type cards, although they obviously work poorly with Aether Vial. The turn count also lines up poorly since you can't Miracle them until turn 3 unless you have fast mana cards like Chrome Mox. Perhaps they could go in a bigger stompy version of white aggro, playing cards like Ancient Tomb. Another possibility is using them with library manipulation like Brainstorm in decks such as Esper Stoneblade. My personal bet is that they don't see much if any play, but they're powerful enough to be worth testing. Illuminor Szeras is a black 3 mana 3/3 legendary artifact creature that has tap, sacrifice another creature, add black mana equal to that creature's mana value. Cards like Culling the Weak, Sacrifice, and Burnt Offering already see play in cEDH and combo decks. Illuminor Szeras is a commander version of those effects, although since it's a creature and requires tapping, it's less efficient and loopable than the spell versions. However, always having access to the effect from the command zone is great. It can be played early off numerous fast mana cards like Dark Ritual and Jeweled Lotus, and since it's an artifact, it can be untapped for repeated uses with cards like Voltaic and Manifold Key. It's unfortunate that the mana it generates is based on mana value rather than power, but it still has the potential to create a big burst of mana early. I'd look to combine it with high value cost reduction creatures like Metalwork Colossus. I suspect it's just worse than Crick Son of Yawgmoth, but it has potential. Next up are a multitude of cards: Canoptek Tomb Sentinel, Necron Deathmark, Chaos Defiler, and Drach'Nyen. These are colorless, black and/or red artifacts, 3 out of 4 also being creatures, that range from 4 to 6 mana and have an ETB effect that destroys or exiles a creature or non-land permanent. Canoptek Tomb Sentinel is 4 mana, colorless, and exiles a non-land permanent, but only if it entered from the graveyard. Necron Deathmark is 5 mana, black, and destroys a creature. Chaos Defiler is 5 mana, black and red, and destroys a non-land permanent both on entering and dying. And finally, Drach'Nyen is a 6 mana equipment, black and red, and exiles a creature. 4 to 6 mana places them out of reach for most Legacy decks, but notably they're all artifacts. All of the cards have various other abilities, and the creatures have decent, but not great, stats, but their most likely home is being used with Goblin Welder in decks like Painter. Chaos Defiler is probably the best one since it triggers both on entering and dying, it's not restricted to creatures, and its ability doesn't target, so it can get around things like Hexproof and Protection. It also has the best stats out of the 3 creatures. Drach'Nyen is an equipment and therefore tutorable by Stoneforge Mystic. It's possible you could even play it in a Stoneblade deck or a deck like D&T with some modifications to the mana base, or even without access to black and red mana to cast it at all, only being able to be cheated in via Stoneforge's ability. Being artifacts, they're all also potential wish targets for Karn the Great Creator if a Rakdos Karn deck ever appears, or in a future big artifact deck similar to 8-cast. Also, Necron Deathmark could potentially see play in Nickfit. Out of the Tombs is a 3 mana black enchantment with 2 abilities. The first isn't the important one, but I'll go over it for completeness sake. On upkeep, put 2 counters on the enchantment, then mill that many cards. The second and more important ability reads, if you draw from an empty library, instead return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you can't, you lose the game. This is an interesting win-con enabler for cEDH and an alternative to Dread Return if you can mill your deck over with something like Hermit Druid and then find a way to draw, putting Thassa's Oracle into play. Some potential draw enablers from the graveyard are Deep Analysis, Cling to Dust, Uro, or any cheap cantrip from your hand like Gitaxian Probe. Poxwalkers is a black 3 mana 3/1 zombie with Death Touch that says, whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Poxwalkers joins the ranks of Prized Amalgam and Silversmoke Ghoul to be a surefire inclusion in Legacy, Dredge, and Hogak decks and Oops All Spells, being incredibly good with Cabal Therapy. While its primary use does appear to be in graveyard decks, it's worth noting that it also returns from other cards like Casting from Exile via Expressive Iteration and Escaping Uro. Technomancer is a black 7 mana 5/1 artifact creature that says, when it enters the battlefield, mill 3, then return any number of artifact creatures with total mana value 6 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is clearly a cEDH combo card, and while there aren't currently any good combos with it, similar cards have shown up in Buried Alive or Reanimator piles before, so it's only a matter of time. Right on the heels of Technomancer, we have Trazyn the Infinite, and it was neat of WotC to put what you're supposed to do with the card right in the name. Trazyn is a black 6 mana 4/6 legendary artifact creature with Death Touch that has all activated abilities of artifacts in your graveyard. So basically, an artifact necrotic ooze that can be in your command zone. There are plenty of artifact piles you can go infinite with via Buried Alive, Intuition, and so on. The most obvious one that comes to mind is Phyrexian Devourer plus Triskelion or Walking Ballista to pseudo-infinitely add and remove counters from Trazyn to ping all your opponents to 0. Joining the list of Goblin Welder targets is Triarch Praetorian, a black 2 mana 2/1 artifact creature that says, when it enters the battlefield from a graveyard, draw 2 and lose 2. It also has Unearth for 5 mana and flying. Goblin Welder decks in Legacy often run multi-cantripping cards like Ichor Wellspring, and this is similar to that, though I suspect it's not as good since it doesn't draw if you cast it normally and Wellspring doesn't lose life. Still, it's similar enough that it's worth keeping in mind. Toxicrene is a green 4 mana 2/4 creature with Reach, Death Touch, and most importantly, it says all lands can tap for any color but lose all other abilities. This card is a beating for Legacy lands and Depths decks since it's great against them and is also hard for them to get rid of. It also works with Dark Depths by playing Depths, which will come in with 0 counters, then sacrificing Toxicrene to something like Cabal Therapy, instantly making the 2020 Merit Lage token. Since it's a green creature, it can be Zenith'd for, although 5 mana is somewhat steep. Toxicrene's most likely home is in slower Green Sun Zenith decks like Maverick and Nickfit. Side note, like Blood Moon, Toxicrene blows up Urza's Saga. Chaos Mutation is a blue and red 5 mana instant that reads, exile any number of target creatures controlled by different players. For each creature exiled, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature and puts it onto the battlefield. It's yet another polymorph effect for cEDH decks in the same vein as Divergent Transformations. The big difference between this and those effects is that it can also hit opponents' creatures at instant speed, which can be useful for getting rid of commanders or combo pieces. It's worse as a pure polymorph card since it's 1 mana more expensive and requires both red and blue mana, but it's more flexible in what it can do. Mawloc is a 2 mana red and green 2/2 creature with X in its cost. It has Ravenous, which means it enters with X+1 counters, and if X is 5 or more, you draw a card. When it enters, it fights up to 1 opposing creature, and if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. While not particularly impressive, Mawloc is green and therefore a potential target for Green Sun Zenith, and is notably the cheapest green creature capable of acting as removal printed so far, turning Green Sun into a 3 mana removal spell. Also, since it has X in its cost, it scales up as the game goes on and can become a legitimate threat/removal spell reminiscent of Flametongue Kavu. Shadow in the Warp is a green and red 3 mana enchantment with 2 abilities. The first creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast, and whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, Shadow in the Warp deals 2 damage to that player. This is a potential Legacy hate card in creature-based decks against spell-based decks. Its most likely spot is in the sideboard of grindier creature decks like Maverick or Nickfit to slowly accumulate value versus similarly grindy spell decks like Blue-White X Control. The Lost and the Damned is a blue and red 3 mana enchantment that reads, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control from anywhere other than your hand, or you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, create a 3/3 creature token. This is obviously a grindy value card, but where it goes isn't clear. The easiest way to trigger it is via fetch lands, but it also triggers from playing lands in other ways, such as via Exiled by Expressive Iteration. My guess is that if it sees play, it'll be in the sideboard of blue control decks that include red, or in Delver. Lastly, we come to the Golden Throne, a legendary 4 mana artifact with 2 abilities. If you would lose the game, instead exile the Golden Throne and your life total becomes 1. And tap, sacrifice a creature, add 3 mana in any combination of colors. Where I can see this being played is in cEDH Adnaz decks since it has an ability that functions similarly to Angel's Grace or Phyrexian Unlife. Most Adnaz decks have to win the same turn they cast Adnaz, and Angel's Grace and Phyrexian Unlife are cards they're typically not interested in playing. With the Golden Throne, you can cast Adnaz on the opponent's end step and stay alive no matter how many cards you look at. Additionally, the Golden Throne is colorless and you can therefore play it in more decks, and its second mana adding ability is actually relevant. I suspect it probably still won't see play, but it's good enough to be worth testing. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Magic's new Warhammer Commander cards for Legacy and cEDH. Let me know if you think there were more cards from the set worth discussing that I didn't cover. Take care.